Hello all and welcome to Jason's Thoughts. Today I am taking a request from CK to talk about recruiting. So thanks CK for the suggestion, and if anybody else has a suggestion on anything they'd like to hear about leadership, sales, processes, you name it, please leave your feedback in a comment. I'd be more than willing to talk about it and just give my thoughts. So let's talk about recruiting. Recruiting is something that we all go through when we have a team. I can say over the last 20 years in many different leadership roles, it's about interviewing and the interview process and finding that great all-star candidate through that. But let's talk about how the interview process is and went for me when I started in my career. Early as a leader and a manager, I was told, well, you need staff and you need to go find them and hire them and so on and so on. And each business has their own way of processing and getting applications in. But I wanted to talk more about the interview. Now at the time, I was handed an interview guide and said, well, here you go. Here's 20 different questions you can ask every single candidate and find your rock star. All good. I'd never been taught how to interview. So I assure you, through time, things did get better. But on my first interview ever, I still remember to this day, I think I was more nervous than the candidate. So the first thing I want to highlight for feedback is if you've never interviewed someone, no different than coaching the coach. Ask someone, either a peer or a leader, to come and sit in a coaching session or an interview session, mind you, with you. Or if they're experienced in the interview process, ask them to run the interview for you. In either case, there is learning to be had. If you are running the interview yourself, then that person that is listening in can give you feedback on how well you did. Now, if you've never done an interview before, I strongly recommend you have someone else run it because you are representing your brand, your business, and if you fail miserably, it can also poorly reflect on that business. So in that case, as I said, get a leader or a peer to run the interview. And what happens? You get to observe them and how they conduct an interview. So very, very key, but definitely you want to solicit feedback. Now again, I had never been given feedback on interview process, and I am sure in my early ages of management, I was quite poor at my execution. But as anything, practice, although not good when dealing with actual candidates isn't good, you do learn. And I think a lot of businesses these days have realized that they did not arm their managers with all the tools beyond just an interview guide. You need to practice and role play that before you ever get into a candidate interaction. So, my thoughts: practice, practice, practice. Prepare by reviewing an interview guide so you know the questions almost off the top of your head rather than continuing to read off of a form or guide. Also be prepared for that candidate when they come into your store or into your business. Make time, make an area set up, have their resume ready, and be completely prepared. And do it in tandem when possible. If you're in a rural market and your leader or you don't have any peers close by, throw them on the phone. Throw it on speakerphone. Although this may seem a little awkward, as long as you introduce them and engage them in part of the interview, the candidate will still be comfortable. Or FaceTime or Skype if you want to do video to make it a little less uncomfortable and a little bit more of a face versus just a voice. I could also highly recommend that. So practice, practice, practice. Buddy up, especially if you're not confident in your interview skills, and get feedback. because the only way to get better is to receive feedback. And if you're not getting any, you might think you're awesome, or you might be missing something. So that is key number one. Now let's talk about the recruiting side of it. I think, maybe you have only one position open and you have 3 or 4 great candidates. You obviously are going to pick the best one for your business at that time. But if you've done such a great job in interviewing those other candidates that unfortunately you have to decline, there is a desire to still work for you and work for that business. And it's important to keep them in your back pocket as leads. So the follow-up when you have to decline a candidate, and if you don't decline candidates and leave them hanging, please don't do that. You should always follow up and let them know. But in those ones that are really great candidates, let them know that if, or ask for their permission to stay in contact with them. And if an opportunity does open up in the future, if they would be interested to reach out to them and get that commitment from them. And these are what I would call hot leads. Change is inevitable, especially in the retail world. And so if you get an inkling of someone maybe going back to school, or they've just finished their school and now they're going to go on to something else, you want to be able to go back into those hot files with the people that you have already talked to and built a connection with and thought they were still great, they just weren't the #1 pick, and reach out to them and build that funnel for yourself, so that when you do have those gaps or unexpected drop-offs in staff, you have a funnel there for your protection. So keep leads, ask for permission to call them back, and always build up why it's great to work for the company you work for and why they would want to be a part of that. So that's all I have on recruiting and interviewing. Please, again, feel free to leave comments or feedback. If you want more information on my thoughts, would love to hear. And thanks again, CK. Appreciate the comment and feedback.